Smoak here with you. And Craig, last night, about an hour after we shut her down, got home and the House settlement has happened. It closes out 3 lawsuits. One of the attorneys, on the House side, believes wholeheartedly that this prevents future lawsuits. I don't think that he's completely right, but he's sued the NCAA 12 times. But this is a big moment in that this opens the door for the NCAA to bring NIL in-house and pay players directly. And this has been a very long battle for the players versus the NCAA, really probably about 35 years, but when it started to gain like some serious publicity. And it's monumental and it's huge, and it's something we've been talking about a lot. So this door is closed on House versus NCAA as far as this particular lawsuit and the other 2 that were rolled into it, but many other doors are still open.
Disagree. It's not totally closed just yet. They got some other things they still got to work through. They've come to an agreement, but a lot of the particulars and the actual enforcement of this is not done yet. But for the most part, they've found a finish line of some sorts. It's a win for the players and all of the people that have now attached themselves to players, whether that be lawyers or agents or whatever the case may be that have been advocating for them. It's a win for those folks. It's a win for just the people who thought that athletes should always be getting paid, and that coming from the school. It's a win. As much as people will say, this is all about the players, and it is mostly about the players, it's a win for the schools too. I mean, I know it doesn't seem like that, but you can't tell me that them being able to bring this in-house is not a win in some ways for them. This is exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
Now you can say, well, they're having to spend all this money that otherwise would be going to this, that, or the other, and you're right, but they'd still much rather have control than not have control. And so now they have not full reign like they used to have and like they will never have again. But this is something now where they've gained a little bit, I think, in return as well. So, yeah, you're going to write a big check for the next several years to many athletes who deserve the money based on this case. But I think you're also going to have a bit more of the controls than you've been accustomed to these last couple of years. So, yeah, it's an historic day. I mean, players are not full employees, but, in my head, I kind of consider them that now at this point, basically, since they'll get paid directly. And I didn't love college sports because of the money to begin with. Like, it never mattered to me what schools were getting paid this or that, or the player equation. That was always a question that everybody debated on whether that should happen or whether it would ever happen. I think it's long overdue, and I'm glad that we're here. It just depends on the day, either completely nauseous at the thought of more legal stuff or excited about what that road could lead us down towards. And in this case, we've been talking about this a long time, so I'm excited that there's a bit of an end of the road here as far as this particular story goes. Unfortunately, I know that leads to 7 new branches that all shoot off. Just looking at the comments to any number of reports is like, all right, well, how is this taxed and categorized? And I'm just like, boom. It's like, just don't even get me started on all the new questions that this creates. I don't know. We'll get there. Can we just enjoy this? Because it's been a long time coming, but yeah, it's a new world now. You brought me one of my least favorite things that we hear from people about NIL. They'll be like, yeah, but they'll have to pay taxes. Of course they'll have to pay taxes.
Yeah. Everybody pays taxes. That's okay, but when I don't have to pay taxes? When I have $0.
Right. No, it's not just a matter of them paying taxes. It's the getting down into the particulars of what kind of form will they file.
Is this a 1099 or a 1040?
I love the hardcore fans, but I'm just like, gee, where is there a bottom to your interest? Anywhere. My gosh, this huge announcement, it's already this new concern. I don't know. I think we need to enjoy this day.
Yeah.
For those who have been waiting for this. And then also, it creates a whole new set of issues. I'm not blind to that. I just think that we've got time over the course of this summer and the coming weeks and months to figure out some of the things but I know people are just fascinated by, information. And so I've seen a lot scrambling to find out, all right, what's the next thing now? And I don't know, but it's a big story, obviously. And so it's creating a lot of conversation, and that's great.
Yeah. Tell me you need sunlight without needing sunlight is what tax form do you have to fill out? All right. That's something, unless you're
for that type of person, like they'll be the ones that are hoping for in the new video game, not so much like that you've got cool spin moves or anything. It's like, how do I configure the NIL payments? There's people that are interested in that kind of stuff. I'm not that person. That's what I'm saying is like, so I see that. And so there's a lot of, for those folks, and I'm sure plenty of them listen to the show, like that's cool. But I just think that like everybody is so quick to always move to the next thing. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we all realize what a big thing this is and can kind of just sit in that, because like I said, there's going to be months coming. Like this is not all finalized to start off with what I was saying earlier. There are still unanswered questions and things as far as this particular agreement that it's not like tomorrow they just start getting paid. It's like there's a lot of things to figure out. So a big step forward, but a lot more to go. And I know there's plenty of people that aren't excited about this whole idea. There's plenty of people that feel like this is one step further into just pro sports and less of the college athletics they knew. And so it's bittersweet for some folks as well, but it's great for the athletes. And I do think it's better for the schools than it's being portrayed.
Yeah, if we're doing Star Wars right now, we're on the Phantom Menace.
Right.
Like we're at the beginning of the story. We're not
over yet. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got 8 other movies and a billion series to go. 9 other movies. I'm sorry, I forgot about Rogue One. But we've got all of that. And okay, so Ross Dellinger continues his streak of leading off the show. Just a legendary streak. I'm going to go through these so that people know the facts. He's doing a great job. He's absolutely killing it. Almost every other media person we have on talks about how much Ross is killing it in this right now. But, okay, $2.776 billion in back damages over 10 years from the NCAA National Office in the Schools, 4060. The top 15 to 25,000 D1 athletes who played from 2016 to 2020-ish, and the allocation formula for distribution with estimated 90% to P5 football and men's basketball players, which is approximately 6,000 athletes. So that's the money you're going to get. So you can do the math over how much money they'll get over 10 years per athlete, but it'll be spread out over that time. Next up, the revenue share. 20 to 22 million annually, fluid, and will escalate based on school revenue figures from the schools to the athletes. School discretion on the distribution, and Title IX applies. It'll be implemented in summer of fall of 2025, and the exceptions are $5 million of Alston and new scholarships can count towards that cap. So that's another lawsuit, was Alston. Now, cap enforcement, court oversights and audits, athlete reporting mechanism of third-party NIL, must be true NIL based on developed fair market value data, enforced through NCAA outside entity with court backing, and the burden on school and athlete to prove true NIL, and no pay-for-play / booster play. That's the part I don't really think they can get around.
And never have been able to.
Legally, yeah. Because there's nothing that's happened in court that says that I can't. And I think this is where the NCAA is missing this, and that they are, because the basic thing is by telling somebody you can't make money for doing this, then look, if I have $1 billion and I want Craig and Garrett to come and play for my school, if I own a business, I can pay them for whatever I want to pay them for. There's no there's nothing that tells me that I can't, people get paid to play video games. There's nothing. And I can say, listen.
There's people on TikTok which I don't have and I never will, and not because of China or anything. I just I'm too old at this point. I'm done. I'm done with the new apps at this stage.
We have one for this for the.
Well,
thing
great, but you won't see me on there.
No.
That's. I mean, I totally get it. And if I was trying to hop onto popularity, that would be the place to go. I'm just saying that's where I've cut off. All right, I'm just gonna be. I'm gonna stop here as far as social media apps go. But there's people on TikTok that make, I don't know, thousands of dollars a day just making weird noises. So, I mean, how are you going to tell somebody what they're, what they're worth or what they can make on anything?
That's going to be the thing. Now, this should allow maybe for some shadiness to be regulated a little bit more, but I don't think pay for play is going away. Like that, I just don't think, even though that they believe that, and there'll be some more enforcement, and they'll be able to do it through courts. There's just going to be some things that have to be codified a little bit more. This is one of the most interesting things of all this because this affects every sport. The roster changes. It eliminates scholarship caps. So you can give as many scholarships as you want for something, so you don't have to worry about that, but it implements new roster limits, which is not finalized yet, but that means that you'll be able to have ability to provide scholarships for an entire roster in sports that have for years been held. And here's the thing it's weird to me about Title IX. So Title IX guaranteed that you had to, have the same amount of scholarships for female athletes as you did for men, but then it also allowed schools to put caps on scholarship and screw them both. Mm-hmm. Baseball players and softball players were each getting the raw end of the deal there because they both couldn't get full scholarships because they had to balance it out. And the reason that they decided they were going to balance it out is because they set these arbitrary limits on how many scholarships you could set. But, then you're hurting sports anyway. I think, and that for years, I think that that has hurt professional baseball and college baseball because professional baseball gets guys that decide not to go to college because it's too expensive, and then maybe guys who would have been good pros if they played for a couple years in college don't get there. Guys don't go to college because, the scholarships aren't there. And if you played football, basketball, and baseball as a kid, when you get to scholarship time, if you were, equally good in two of those sports where you could get a scholarship in either one, say football and baseball, well, you're probably going to take football because they're going to pay for everything, especially if you're in that area of financial need, and then maybe hope that you're allowed to play baseball. So also a potential football roster reduction to as few as 85 roster spots that is ongoing, which means that they can have as many scholarships as they want, but they don't have 85 roster spots, so you wouldn't have 25 or 30 walk-ons.
So in theory, Georgia could have 100 scholarship football players.
Yeah, but they can only have 85 on the roster.
Right, but you could just tuck away 15 dudes on scholarship if you wanted to.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
But there just wouldn't be, there'd be non-roster players.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out how people are going to cheat the system here and find the advantage.
I also don't think that's going to benefit you that much to have guys just waiting. That's going to be the old school of keep away.
Right.
You remember, and the only example I can think of this, and it was true then, but do you remember in Rudy where, there was the one guy on the team who was kind of mad to be there, and he was like, I had scholarships to 3 Big Ten schools, but my dad made me come here. Well, back then, that was pre-85 scholarship limit, so while he was good, all Notre Dame was doing was keeping him away from Wisconsin or whatever.
Yeah, they're, you're not going to have a guy who's just probably content to sit away and be the 91st scholarship player that's not even on an active roster. I'm just trying to figure out, that's going to get exploited somehow or another. I mean, anything and everything will. I'm just wondering with that unlimited cap on football, how that could possibly work to somebody's advantage or disadvantage. But yeah, I mean, if you cap it at 85 as far as the roster goes, and that does eliminate some of the funny business that could go on. So, yeah, just was curious about that.
Yeah, and also Title IX applies to that one. And finally, governance/other, potential new D1 subdivision for increased power conference rulemaking, flexibility for leagues to set some of their own rules, revenue share model could be extended beyond 10 years, and plaintiffs agreed to lobby on behalf of NCAA's efforts seeking congressional protections. That's a pretty big part there that, the plaintiffs are agreeing to say, hey, we will accept some congressional protections here. So that could allow some things. Now, 2 different things have come out, and I didn't put these up because, it's just kind of how the world works. Ted Cruz said, yes, we need to do this. And then somebody else came back and said, well, even if we do, I would suggest that they collectively bargain before they come to us for something. So that's kind of where we are when it comes to Congress.
Man, you know what? When I follow college sports, I'm like, what does Ted Cruz think about these freaking topics? Yeah, okay. So that's good. I mean, we knew they didn't answer every question, and so inevitably, and I saw some of this too as well of not necessarily that particular part, but just some of the things that have been agreed to. I'm already seeing the holes being shot through that and how that'll, potentially get carved up. So, on the surface, a lot of, I guess you'd consider them good things. and some settling of the waters. But as everybody's pointed out, this is a temporary fix to what could be, more down the line. But yeah, I think it's a good day overall. It's obviously a good day for the athletes, and there are some things now that are a bit sturdier than they were previously as far as the game and rules. It's not going to make everybody happy. There's plenty of people, non-power schools, people who are fans of non-revenue sports that are fearing the worst about what this means, and whether you're looking at just basically club sports for any number of, water polo or whatever, softball, what all that looks like. So there's still a lot of fear over what this could mean on the other side of it. But I think in general, prior to today and this not being settled, basically fully settled, although again, like I said, it's not officially official, like as far as the particulars, but this is all pretty much well and done. I think it's a good day in that regard, and helps, take some of the weight off of the problem pile that has been stacking for years now. And there's still more to do and take off of that pile, but this is a step in the right direction. And for the most part, like I said, there's definitely little things here and there that, depending on who you are, you can have a quibble with. But in general, I think this is probably best for all parties to move forward, as opposed to the alternative. So if anybody said, well, no, this sucks, we shouldn't have done it this way. All right, well, then pay out all the damages to the athletes and see where your school sits after paying all that money. That was the alternative. So, yeah, I think you take this path.
All right, Nicole Auerbach, to kind of sum this up really quickly, there's still some other things to be worked out. Title IX, classification of revenue share payments, etc. House lawyers and representatives for the NCAA do not believe that the Fontenot case will stand in the way of this settlement. That's what they believe right now, but that case is still out there. We will talk to Dan Lust about why they think that and why maybe the Fontenot case people disagree. That one's going on in Colorado. There was an attempt for the NCAA to roll Fontenot in because they were able to roll two other cases into house. That was denied. So that is something that they'll have to deal with. The NCAA negotiated for significant protections that allow it to enforce its existing rules. And there's still details to come on that. And NCAA reps don't believe that the total number of scholarships nationally will decrease and shift to roster limits, no scholarship caps. I think that would probably be a disaster for most athletic departments. They're like, well, we're going to give, a few more scholarships. We're going to eliminate sports or, whatever overall. Like we'll just roll them all into the sports that we care about, as opposed to, well, sorry, swimming and diving, bummer, lacrosse. You should have done better, field hockey. I don't think that's going to happen right off the bat here. And then there will have to be NCAA and legislative policy changes to accompany some of what's been agreed upon in the settlement, such as roster limits for each sport. And settlement does not deal with the issue of employment, which will continue to be out there.
Yay!
So,
like I said, yeah, it's a win in some ways. It also just, there's tons of questions still. So that's great for the legal folks. And, we'll talk to Dan Lust about some of that. But yeah, it obviously was never going to answer every question. And that's something we harped on over the last few days, was that this is not the end all be all, but it is, we're celebrating if you're an athlete, if you're the family of an athlete. I know it's going to vary who gets paid what, depending on, the sport and just, how that's all divvied up, but certainly a win for them, and sounds like there's probably more wins coming their way in some form or fashion. But yeah, this doesn't prevent, new litigation. I just think at some point, is the juice worth the squeeze? As far as Alex Fontenot's case in particular, like is there going to be a bunch of athletes that go like, hey, here's this guaranteed thing we can take, or here's this litigation we can go join and see where that takes us? I don't know. I would hope that, just for the sake of my own sanity, but also just the world without litigation that we'd all like to live in when it comes to college sports, I would hope that that's, tidied up and taken care of in some form or fashion, and that everybody kind of just gets on board and can figure out all the other big things that need to be figured out. But yeah, there are still some cases clogging up this from moving on flush. So we'll see how those go.
Okay, and this is from Mitt Winter, who's on the show 2 days ago, and Pete Nakos, who's on the show today. But Pete Nakos reporting that, of course, Colorado Fontenot versus NCAA was not rolled into House Carter Hubbard, and it can proceed on its own. and could affect a little bit of the House settlement as it begins to work out, because presidents have been approving the House settlement based on the belief that Fontenot would be consolidated in its claims released. That's not the case, so this lawsuit still sits out there, as well there will continue to be lawsuits, because there are going to be people on the outliers of this, or there'll be details that come up that somebody decides, well, this is not fair inside this agreement, and we didn't really agree to this, so let's revisit that. So even though that, like, again, a lawsuit door is starting to be closed, and, still, like, this is what you're talking about, Craig, where there's still part of the door a little bit open, and details have to be figured out. And Fontenot is, to me, that's probably the biggest detail, because, all those other things that you have to work out, you kind of know that you're going to do that. But with Fontenot is the biggest question mark out there, since it's not going to be rolled into this case. So I tried to get a couple of athletic directors on the show today, and both schools responded with almost the same thing. There were guys we had on before, and it said right now they really like to refer to the joint statement that the conferences put out on it, which is this here. The 5 autonomy conferences and the NCAA agreeing to settlement terms is an important step in the continuing reform of college sports that will provide benefits to student athletes and provide clarity in college athletics across all divisions for years to come. The settlement is also a roadmap for college leaders in Congress to ensure this uniquely American institution can continue to provide unmatched opportunity for millions of students. All of Division I made today's progress possible, and we will have work to do to implement the terms of the agreement as the legal process continues. We look forward to working with our various student-athlete leadership groups to write the next chapter of college sports, and that is signed by Charlie Baker and the commissioners across the Power 5 conferences, who are all named in this suit. One, I know that they probably don't want to do 100 interviews about this. Two, we're going to ask detailed questions, but I just went through all the things that they don't know yet, so they can't really answer them.
Yeah.
And then they don't want to be wildly speculative and then be like, well, I thought you said that this would happen. So that's why. And I
wouldn't want to
totally
speak today.
that.
There's too many questions still.
Yeah, there's too many questions. I thought we'd ask just to see if we get opinions on it. But again, there's too many questions to be answered.
No, it makes sense to ask, but it also makes sense from their standpoint to say, no, I don't want to talk right now.
I was totally expecting it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was either expecting, here is my two things. It's either going to be like a fiery yes, like, I've got things to say and I don't give a damn what everybody else saw, which was going to be rare. Like, that was going to be the yes. And then no, because, I mean, every answer is going to be like, well, don't know yet. Don't know yet. Don't know yet. Well, that'll be interesting to see. Well, there's a working group, all those different things to make it boring. Here is the statement from retiring head of Notre Dame, the Reverend John Jenkins. The settlement, though undesirable in many respects and promising only temporary stability, is necessary to avoid what would be the bankruptcy of college athletics. To save the great American institution of college sports, Congress must pass legislation that will preempt the current patchwork of state laws, establish that our athletes are not employees but students seeking college degrees, and provide protection from further antitrust lawsuits that will allow college to make and enforce rules that will protect our student athletes and ensure competitive equity among our teams. All that's fine, except competitive equity has never been a part of this. There are two conferences right now that don't even know what those words mean.
It's the least competitive equity we probably ever had in the sports history. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I know there's, I guess, some desire, some hope that could change and it could be a little bit closer to being a more even playing field. But all we've seen the last couple of years is, is just more separation, more of a separating in terms of finances and TV network coverage and things like that. So, yeah, I know that you're kind of clinging on to that. It does feel like there's a lot of just holding on to the way that it was and this ideal of or set of ideals or this picture of what it was, and it's just not even close to that, nor will it ever be close to that ever again. It's still got some familiarity to it. It's still, in some ways, the game that everybody loved, but that's on the field mostly. Off the field, it's completely different than what you even watched 10 years ago. And the competitive balance, I mean, you can't prevent Texas or Oklahoma from going to the SEC or USC or UCLA from going to the Pac-12 and Oregon and Washington and everybody that's made their moves, SMU going to the ACC. But all that separation has created, more gulfs. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma were already, king dogs of the Big 12, and now they're set to make even double. Now, should they earn more? Yeah. I don't want to get into that whole argument because it all makes sense from their perspective. And if you're being honest with yourself, it makes sense even if you're a fan of Kansas or of Texas Tech or whatever. You'd do the exact same thing. If they called you right now, you would be the first lining up to say, I'll pay what I have to for season tickets to get us in the SEC. So nobody can slight them or fault them for that, but it has created a situation where, there's been this movement that now has a bit more of a gap from 2 to just 3 than there was before, and from 4 till 5, especially not knowing if 5's even going to be 5 here in a couple of years. So I understand trying to hold on to competitive equity as much as you can, but man, that is something that is nowhere close to what it was even about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yes, and to